Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. Our topic today is crowdfunding in K-12 education. My name is Karen Miller-Ricks. I will be your moderator today. Following are a few technical notes of information to assist you during the webinar. If you have a technical problem during the broadcast, please contact Zoom support at the toll-free number shown in red and provide today's webinar ID, also shown in red. As you participate in this webinar, we invite you to expand the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag NASSPwebinar. We are also on Facebook at facebook.com/principals. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available as well as the PowerPoint on the NASSP website within 24 hours at nassp.org/webinar. Charles Bass leads Donorschoose.org, a nonprofit website which enables anyone to help a classroom in need. Charles launched the organization in 2000 at a Bronx public high school where he taught history for 5 years. Today, teachers at more than 80% of all the public schools in America have created classroom project requests on Donorschoose.org, and more than 3 million people have given to those projects. Donorschoose.org is one of Oprah Winfrey's ultimate favorite things and made the cover of Fast Company as one of the 50 most innovative companies in the world, the first time a charity has received such a recognition. Mildred Charlie Green is a principal at Northwood High School. She has been principal for 6 years. Mildred is also the current Maryland State Principal of the Year. And now, I would like to bring in our presenters to start the webinar.
Hey, thank you, Karen, and thank you so much to each of you who are on the line right now or listening to a recording. Super grateful to you for taking an interest in this field of crowdfunding and how it can enable you and your teachers to enrich the school lives of your students. On the slide you're looking at right now, you see a couple examples of traditional school fundraisers, a bake sale, collecting box tops for kids, perhaps selling candy door to door. And those are traditional ways of alleviating the problem that you all are expert in of teachers who go into their own pockets to purchase school supplies. A recent study shows that it's to the tune of $500 a year that the average teacher goes into their own pockets to purchase school supplies. And so people are increasingly turning to fundraisers, both traditional and non-traditional. And on the next slide, you'll see an example of a non-traditional but increasingly common way of raising funds, otherwise known as crowdfunding, which is a really digitized and streamlined way for a school or a classroom to raise funds. Now, there are a lot of crowdfunding sites out there, and I want to mention just quickly 3 things that make Donorschoose.org different from other crowdfunding sites. 3 things that we think you ought to look for in whatever crowdfunding site you encourage your teachers to use. The first is that we are a nonprofit dedicated exclusively to public schools. The second is that we enable teachers and schools to access funding from beyond their school walls, really from beyond their entire state, by accessing donations from people who've never met the teacher or the students whom they are supporting. And thirdly, we ensure accountability and safeguards, and I'll explain exactly how in just a moment. And of course, this approach to crowdfunding, this new approach, enables all kinds of incredible things, even including a $29 million donation that we received just months ago to fully fund every single classroom project request on our site. So with that as a sense of the possibilities, I'd love to give you, on the next slide, just a little bit of a backstory into how Donorschoose.org began. We started 18 years ago, long before crowdfunding was a word, at the high school in the Bronx where I was a history teacher. and where my colleagues and I would spend a lot of our own money on school supplies, and then talk in the teacher's lunchroom about a field trip we wanted to take our students on, or a set of novels that we wanted them to read, or a science experiment that we wanted them to undertake. And of course, those were experiences that we couldn't afford to cover out of our own wallets. And I just figured that there were people out there, people all over the country, who would want to help teachers like us if they could see exactly where their money was going. So my students actually helped me to create a website where public school teachers could create classroom project requests, and donors could choose the classroom projects they wanted to support. It was a really nascent website. My students were our staff members. My classroom was our office. And so to get my colleagues to try out this new site and post the first projects, I had to bribe them by asking my mom to make her famous roasted pear dessert. And I told my colleagues, if you eat one of these roasted pears, you have to go to this new website called Donorschoose.org and ask for whatever it is you most want for your students right now. And that sounded like a good enough deal for a bunch of them to post the first projects. And then to get the first donors on the site, my students volunteered after school to spread word to potential donors all across the country. They addressed and compiled letters by hand telling folks about this place where someone with $10 could be a classroom hero. So that is how we began. And what I think is important to note is that what we built, what my students and I started those 18 years ago, was not so much a fundraising tool for teachers, but instead a community of donors who love to support teachers they may have never met. Teaching in the Bronx, I never would have felt comfortable asking my students' parents to foot the bill for the classroom requests that my colleagues and I were posting. I knew a few people. My aunt, who's a nurse, funded the first project. I didn't know that many other donors personally who could fund projects on our site. So from the very beginning, we set out to build a community of donors, it's now 3 million strong, who like to support classroom requests from teachers they've never met before. And media coverage from Oprah, which Karen was nice enough to call out, to Stephen Colbert, to People magazine that you see right here, has helped us to build that community. And if we go to the next slide, you can see the impact that we have been able to achieve. As Karen mentioned, 80% of all the public schools in America have at least one teacher who has created a classroom project request on our site. And 3 million donors have given over $775 million to classroom projects on our site, delivering books, art supplies, field trips, robotics kits, and all manner of resources to 30 million students, overwhelmingly in low-income communities, although we are open to all public schools and used in every corner of the country. And if you go to the next slide, you'll get a sense for how much of our funding, almost half of our funding, that comes from partners, which could be PricewaterhouseCoopers, that likes to support financial literacy projects on our site, from Google.org, that has supported coding projects on our site, from Dick's Sporting Goods, that supports team sports requests on our site. These partners cumulatively have given over $300 million to classroom projects on our site, and it's one reason why the vast majority of the dollars given to classroom projects on our site come from donors who live entirely outside of the school district to which they are donating. So this really is a way for teachers and schools to access funding that they would never otherwise have access to. It's not so much turning to a teacher's own friends or to students' parents. It's really accessing funding from beyond a teacher's network. And on the next slide, you'll get a sense for all that we do to ensure the absolute integrity and safeguards on our site. For us, it's absolutely imperative that we ensure integrity and transparency and accountability, precisely because the donor may be giving to a classroom that is halfway across the country. And so integrity and accountability and transparency for us means that when a teacher submits a project for funding, we verify the school and we read through the teacher's project request and we email follow-up questions to the teacher if anything is unclear about what students are going to learn. The teacher identifies every item that they need, down to the vendor and the unit cost, and even whether there's a shipping charge, so we can show how every dollar on the project will be spent. And when the teacher's project is funded, we do not give cash to the teacher. We think that would be unsafe to simply hand out cash or to make a deposit into a teacher's personal bank account and trust that things will happen as promised. So instead, we purchase the resources and have them delivered to the school. And we notify the school principal in advance so that they know exactly which teacher has gotten funding for exactly which resources. And those resources, legally speaking, are considered property of the school. And then every teacher for every project publishes an impact letter describing what students have learned as a result of the project so that our donors get to see and feel the impact that they've had. And on the next slide, you'll see the extent to which donors and school principals and school leaders can see how every dollar was spent. This is a level of transparency that you can see right here, and it probably wouldn't be necessary if a teacher was just fundraising from their students' parents or from their friends. But because we're bringing to bear dollars from all across the country, from donors who've never met that teacher or students, it's vital for us to provide this scale of integrity, accountability, and transparency. And of course, that extends to school principals who can sign up for updates on the funded materials being delivered to their school, so they can put it all into an inventory report and keep track of all the books and robotics kits and materials that they've gotten funded for their school. A principal can even sign up to be alerted when a teacher at their school simply posts a project, as well as being notified and getting a report when projects are funded. What's most exciting is that we are developing a toolkit with NASSP that is going to go live on the NASSP website by next week, and this is geared toward and tailored to secondary school principals. So we're super, super excited about that. And one question that we often get is whether classroom requests on our site, and I'll be speaking to this on the next slide, whether classroom requests on our site will cast a positive light on the school, or whether the classroom request will focus on the economic conditions of the school or of a student's family or of the community. And we're really excited to have on our board of directors the pioneer of a philosophy often referred to as asset framing, which posits that if you are talking about students, no matter the community that they're from or no matter their demographics, you should talk about a student's aspirations, about a student's potential, about what a student is passionate about, before defining them by what they might lack. And that means that we urge our teachers to talk about what makes their students special. In fact, we even changed the essay prompt that begins a teacher's classroom request. We used to ask a teacher to tell us about the school in which they teach and their classroom and their students. Now, instead, we simply ask the question, what makes your students special? And that essay prompt helps to ensure that students are upbeat and positive when talking about their project request, and in telling people, showing people how their classrooms learning and instruction would be even further uplifted and even further enriched if the project is funded. We really like to focus on what makes students special, what the funded project will make possible, rather than focusing on what students might lack. And that, going to the next slide, is why folks like Dr. Haidt, the superintendent of public schools in Philadelphia, calls upon his teachers strictly to use Donorschoose.org if they are going to participate in this new world of crowdfunding. But of course, a more authoritative testimonial would come not from a superintendent of public schools, but from a school principal themselves. And we are just so excited and proud to be able to pass the mic to Principal Charlie Green, who I believe, I think it might not be a pure coincidence that Principal Charlie Green has fostered an incredible environment for her teachers to use Donorschoose.org, and that she is also the Maryland State Principal of the Year. I'm sure there are a million other reasons why she's State Principal of the Year, but we'd like to think that one of them is the spirit of entrepreneurship and initiative and dedication to one's students that you see manifest in the projects that her teachers create on our site. So over to you, Principal Charlie Green.
Okay, and prior to Charlie Green presenting, I would like to invite questions and for the audience to submit them using the chat box on your webinar panel. We will respond to as many questions as time permits. If we run out of time to answer all the questions, we will respond by email following the broadcast. So, Mildred?
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, Charles, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk about my school, something I never shy away from, and to share a little bit about who we are, how we came to use Donorschoose, and how that really reflects some of the values that we have at our school in terms of innovation and making sure that teachers have the tools they need to give students a high quality experience. So if you could advance to the next slide, I wanted to share a little bit about my school. In terms of who we are, in education, we use a lot of data and demographics to get a picture of what we're dealing with. I will just start by saying that I feel like our school, and I've said this frequently, is the best kept secret in this part of our county. In our part of the county, students actually choose their high schools, and they have a choice of 5 different high schools they can choose from. When I became the principal of Northwood High School 6 years ago, our school was near the bottom in terms of the high school that students were choosing. And that was for a number of reasons. We were a smaller school. We didn't have a signature program. There were a number of things that somehow made us not as desirable a choice as other schools. I am super proud to say that has changed drastically. And at our most recent welcome event, we had standing room only in terms of folks really trying to make sure that they had a slot at our high school. And that's very exciting as a principal and really validating for my teachers and my staff and all the hard work that they do. Just to share a little bit about the profile, we are about 54% Hispanic in terms of our demographics, 25% African American, close to 14% white students, about 5.6% Asian, and then of that number, roughly 24% of our students are ELL learners. They came to us and they're part of a language learning program that doesn't really reflect, who they are, but oftentimes when people think about ELL students, they're framed, and Charles spoke to it, in terms of what they lack as opposed to the very unique life experiences they bring and how exciting they make our very already diverse community. All in all, our students represent 56 countries and speak roughly 29 languages. So we have a hugely diverse staff as well as diverse student body. And so there's a lot going on that is excellent and exciting at Northwood. From those ELL students, we've got a number of new and different experiences they bring, all the way up to students who are participating in our new signature program that allows them to get an associate's degree prior to getting their high school diploma. So we've got a lot to be proud of and a lot of things to be excited about. That gives you a picture of who we are. Silver Spring, Maryland is right at the DC line. It's in a largely suburban part of Montgomery County. But our proximity to Washington, D.C. and the city makes us a little bit of that suburban-urban mix that brings with it some transients, but lots of opportunity to do very exciting things in partnership with folks around us, and that's where we've focused our energies. So to talk a little bit about our areas of focus, at Northwood, we focus on 3 key areas, and these we call our strategic priorities. First is powerful instruction. And by powerful instruction, we mean not just using data and high quality curriculum and the very best teachers to ensure that we are helping students learn and do the very best, but also engaging students and putting them in control of their own learning. So we are preaching every day that teachers are innovative and they are doing things that are exciting and interesting to engage learners and to help them discover and ignite that passion for learning and particular content areas. Another key focus is equity. I've already shared the diversity of our school. One of the things that we've been very focused on is making sure that all students have access to high quality learning and leading. We have an expectation that all students are going to in some way lead and leave their mark as a legacy on our school. And so we're always excited to welcome what our seniors call Capstone Projects, where they do a culminating activity that really illustrates the learning that's happened here at Northwood. And that's something that all students do, whether they came in as ELL learners or they're in that signature program that I told you all about. And our last key area of focus is accountability, and we focus on shared accountability. it is the expectation that every teacher, every student, everyone is engaged in making sure that this is an awesome place to learn and to grow, that everyone has a legacy and a mark to leave, and that we are speaking with students and staff every day about how are they going to do that. So how have we been successful in doing this? Really, it's preaching innovation and giving students and staff the opportunity and the ability to, seek out a project or a passion and to really build that passion and to really hone that. Some of that comes through the Capstone Projects I shared, and some of it comes through the partnerships that teachers and students create to, start something new and something exciting. So I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. I'm proud of all of the leaders at Northwood. I'm super proud to represent our school at the state level. And as part of that, I get to share some very unique things that we are doing. And Donorschoose has helped us do quite a bit of that. If you could move to the next slide, I want to show how that connection is made. So at Northwood, you get a sense of the projects that we funded. We've got a couple of teachers who've done some really exciting things that speak to that leadership piece. The teachers have come to me and said, I'd like to try this. I'd like to do something unique and different. And while we are a county that, is pretty well funded in many ways, there are always these things at the margin that don't quite fit into the county budget, that there's some things that they just can't quite do on their own. And so when teachers are innovative and they come up with these great ideas about how they're going to engage students in learning or how they're going to support student capstone projects, and they put these ideas forward, we are able to share with them some resources, including Donorschoose, and how they are able to do that. We've had about 13 projects funded. You can see there the number of students who've been helped, the percentage that have been STEM resourced, and that's very exciting because those are my teachers who are primarily leading the way as it comes to that. And just the exciting things that we're doing, I'd love to share just a couple of tidbits. Just so you have an idea of some of the things that we've done. We had our physics teacher who is coincidentally our county physics teacher of the year, so we're excited about bringing high quality staff here. She actually created or asked for a circuit maze board game for her physics classroom. And these games are a fantastic way to allow students the ability to explore and learn about circuits without the academic field. We also had the same teacher come up with a project where she asked for some very old school technology, ticker tape devices. And these devices were used during the first half of an AP physics class to use in conjunction with the curriculum to allow for a low-tech method of creating measurable models of motion. And so that was something that was able to really demonstrate for students some of the concepts that they were discussing in physics. And so going back to, some of the learning needs of our students, that hands-on experience, that ability to have access to these resources, we really credit the work of, one, that innovative teacher, and two, Donorschoose, and being able to marry those two and come up with something that really moved student learning forward. Other projects include sensors that teachers use for students to be able to really actually record and sense heart, muscle, and respiratory functions, as well as tablets that teachers used alongside those sensors and for other projects in those STEM fields. So these are just a couple of the projects that our teachers have been working on. We are super excited to be able to support them. As a principal, I feel like my job is really to facilitate and stand out and step out of the way. I was excited to be able to take our experience with Donorschoose and to bring that to our high school principals professional learning community. I am the chair of the high school principals learning community here in Montgomery County. Roughly 26 principals were there, and I was able to share the resource of Donorschoose. And so now I'm proud to say not only is Northwood experiencing, this partnership and this ability to fund teacher ideas and to spark student innovation and excitement, but the other high school folks here in the county are also on board and looking forward to the similar work. So that's just a little bit about Northwood. Obviously, you can tell that I could go on forever about the exciting work that's going on here, but I will pause for a moment and certainly turn it back over to you, Charles. And I believe we're going to entertain and invite some questions as well, which I'm happy to answer.
That's right. Karen, over to you.
Yes, we're at our questions and answer section. And I again welcome anyone in the audience to submit their questions using the chat box. And again, if time permits, and we'll get to your question. If we run out of time, we'll answer them via the email. But we do have a few questions, and one from Joanne. The question is, do you often have districts turn down opportunities for funding because they are not able to provide the infrastructure and maintenance for the desired equipment that someone may be willing to donate? And the example is technology primarily.
Oh, well, that is a good question, and we appreciate the rigor of the question. There are a number of philanthropists and companies and donors that do use Donorschoose.org to fund technology requests from public school teachers all across the country. In many cases, that is because they know that Donorschoose.org will be fulfilling the project, purchasing the technology and having it delivered, and doing so with bulk discounts and the deals we negotiate with our vendors. One really important new feature that we have developed is one where a school district can share its technology guidelines with Donorschoose.org. And so let's say, for example, that in Montgomery County, the county would prefer that teachers request Chromebooks rather than Apple products because the district is an Android district, and those are the devices that they can best support and provide the licenses for, or support the licenses. That means that if a teacher in Montgomery County is creating a technology request, we show them their district's tech guidelines, and we'll say, if you're looking to get laptops funded through Donorschoose, here are your district's guidelines. It should be a Chromebook. It should be this operating system. And we make sure even that teachers are including licenses. And I think for all of those reasons, Donorschoose.org has become a means for a range of philanthropists to underwrite grants and match offers for teachers' technology requests.
Thank you, Charles. We may have an opportunity for one more question. And how can I leverage crowdfunding sites like Donorschoose.org to create a culture of innovation in my school community?
I'll take a quick stab and pass the mic to Principal Charlie Green. I think it really is about using Principal Charlie Green as your exemplar. And I think one key thing is to note that although Donorschoose.org is teacher-driven, and it is a bottoms-up approach to education philanthropy, that does not mean that a school principal or a school district leader even cannot encourage teachers to create projects fitting a particular school-wide or district-wide theme. Principal Charlie Green is great in encouraging her teachers simply to be innovative. If a school principal wants to further say, hey teachers, this year's theme is STEM, and here I'm actually copying from Principal Charlie Green, but if a theme is STEM, or a theme is project-based learning, or even flexible seating, a principal can encourage teachers to create project requests on Donorschoose that fit that theme. And in fact, Dr. Kostarfin in Atlanta, superintendent of Atlanta Public Schools, she just sent an email to all teachers in Atlanta urging them to create college readiness projects on our site. But Principal Charlie Green, what might you add in terms of what a principal can do to sort of help teachers take advantage of the world of crowdfunding?
I think that the ideas that you mentioned are very exciting, and they're very close to what we do. It's not by accident that I'm speaking of all of these science examples when I share some of the work that's going on at our school, because that was a conversation that was held with the department about how can we do this work? What are the resources that are out there, and how can we align our requests so that they are supporting our school goals and needs? Recently, I actually had the conversation with some folks from Donorschoose about actually coming out and speaking to the staff. And so that as we talked with the staff about what some of our initiatives were, that we could actually go through and do some explaining and some training about how to actually craft projects. And so we're excited about potentially engaging in that opportunity as well. But, you know, as Charles said, I do encourage people to be innovative, but I also, as many principals do, encourage folks to, you know, let me know what they're working on. And I do have opportunity to brainstorm and problem solve with teachers about what it is they are looking to do. So there's ample opportunity to guide that work.
Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Charles and Mildred, and to thank you for joining us today for this webinar. And I wanted to also extend an invitation for you to join your colleagues for the 2019 National Principals Conference, which is sponsored by NASSP, that will take place July 18th through the 20th in Boston, Massachusetts. So you can learn more about the conference and register at the address shown on this slide, which is www.principalsconference.org. Again, I would like to thank you for joining us today, and thanks again to Charles and Mildred.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.